There are more evolved entities that feed on us, just as we do with animals and plants, but they are fully aware of our existence? Perhaps this is the great mystery of human esoteric science, and beyond the revolution of the witches is that they refuse to honor agreements that did not participate. Nobody asked me if I would consent to be eaten by beings from another type of consciousness. My parents just brought me into this world to be food, like themselves, and that is the end of history. Carlos Castaneda, the active side of infinity. I cannot imagine anything more terrifying than being the invisible predator food. That even in this moment, impossible to perceive for the current state of my consciousness, is being slowly devoured by an entity higher evolutionarily, that just as we feed we conceive as evolutionary beings inferior, find me the food needed to survive, and possibly keep climbing in the pyramid of universal consciousness. I think of those horror movies that you see to feel a very particular, an existential rush, which usually was a murderer, or evil entity stalking the stars of which we were substitute. This antagonistic role was more effective, generating more fear, to the extent that was indefinite, more abstract and metaphysical. Is Lovecraft's cosmic horror or supernatural powers of the characters of Stephen King? I think maybe this rise of terror in proportion to the unknowable, the mystery of the paranormal, has a deep anchor in the collective mind of humanity. Maybe it's a holdover from our glimpse of the gods and demons that inhabit the world, or at least inhabit the psyche, that projected on the cave of reality, a world history. We like to think that in the higher dimensions of evolution, if we are not the icing on the cake, the masterpiece of evolution or God, the universe somehow accommodates a harmony in which beings aware coexist peacefully, knowing at the cosmic scale without impeding the upward momentum coming down. Esoteric researcher says Juan Garca Atienza, the reality for humans, is composed as a step pyramid in which we would occupy the top, covering everything up until our feet, and with the conviction that, above us, all the immense sky belongs to a single protective deity, covers us, and makes us part of his infinity, one and indivisible. Whether we imagine that we are a unique epiphenomenon of evolution, and there is no life or consciousness above us in the wilderness of space, we believe that above us there is but one divine legion, the glittering sky nakedness of absolute fusion, or to think that there are currently more evolved beings, aliens on distant worlds, conjure less trouble. Contemplate seriously the possibility that we are the food, energy, of a kind closely linked to our matrix of existence, if well imperceptible. We leave this to the exorbitant speculation of conspiracies and New Age freaks, but a thorough analysis of our experience, looking down on the evolutionary scale, at least theoretically plausible, that does not perceive entities exist at all and that feed of us. If there are any, which it is possible, it would be, however, a quite exceptional case. At this point I would like briefly to clarify that I intend to explore this issue is to create an awareness not paranoid nor reveal a metaphysical epiphany. Honestly, personally, I have no evidence of the existence of these hypothetical entities evolved, under the basic logic of the food pyramid. They could use us as food. My concern arises only from a theoretical perspective that within a rational framework based on observation and experience, of what we know on this planet, is entirely plausible to conceive of beings above us on the evolutionary scale. You may, if so, these entities have evolved to a point where you do not need to feed on those entities immediately below. In some way some human beings refuse to feed the animals. Could feed xenon ultraviolet light, print your own food in 5D or equivalent to nanotechnology, for all we know. But it is also quite possible that, among the multiplicity of beings could have evolved on this planet or in other projects of life, there are those for which humans are desirable. Even there may be entities for which we are more than a cosmic deli menu, are a vital source of energy in your diet, perhaps as one of those transgenic farm chickens, specially grown to feed entire populations. And not necessarily have to feed on our flesh, in the same way that we extract substances from some plants, or use some minerals to fuel our technology, could be synthesized through some kind of molecule, use us as in Matrix as a battery or something more arcane. In one of the few interviews, in which he wanted to talk about the underlying plot of his film 2001, A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick said, "Such cosmic intelligences, eons evolving knowledge, men would be as distant as we are from the ants. They could be in instantaneous telepathic communication throughout the universe, could have achieved total mastery over matter, and thus could be transported instantly across billions of light-years of space, in the last stage could leave the physical form, and exist as a disembodied immortal consciousness throughout the universe. Certainly these intelligences, gods from our limited consciousness, could have transcended biology, and not need food as we know it. But then it could be that feed of mental food, worship, or psychic energy from other subtle forms of energy, that could be found in us. And these cosmic intelligences could be in the places we least expect. And as essay The Promise of the Serpent, Elis Cephas, warns, in a predatory environment, everything is food for someone else, then why assume that this does not apply in the field of consciousness or our interaction with these spirits residing in the entheogens we consume, eager to be possessed by God? According to Juan Garca Atienza, a man who thoroughly investigated issues of what he called another reality without entirely losing sanity in conscious evolution levels, and not just about irrational and instinctive dependence, but capturing an essence, that a species gets mediating their intelligence, and will to continue living, and finally climb the evolutionary pyramid to higher levels of universal consciousness. At this level of cosmic evolution scale, no moral categories of good and evil, there is a fierce energy exchange. In a predatory universe, where energy seems to be what defines whether an entity may continue its existence, and possibly continue up to a strange attractor, the term used by Terence McKenna, to describe the magnetism at the end of time, that drives evolution, not expected to abound moral condescension. If there are more evolved beings that react in ways that favor our own evolution, like angels, surely they do because it encourages conduct their own evolution, to increase under a feedback mechanism, its energy level. Daniel Pinchbeck explains in his book Breaking Open the Head Ideas Armenian mystic George Gurdjieff, this transformation process occurs in stages over time. He believed that everything, including mental processes and thoughts, were a material form, and all the material was in a way sensitive. Everything in its own way is smart and aware, he said. The degree of consciousness corresponds to a degree of density or speed of vibration. The more dense the material, the less conscious is. In his view, the universe functioned as a system of reciprocal maintenance, where each entity level feeds the lower entities. Human beings, organic entities more aware of the earth, were demiurges, food above them. The same idea in the great cosmic Atienza handling, all cosmic reality is a steady accumulation of tension, of causes and effects, a give and take, in which each entity receives its essence from another and gives up its energy to, in turn, be used by another entity more evolved, the which seeks to care for and preserve, for its part, the source of their own survival. That care and conservation imply that precisely one manipulation. The question of why we do not perceive, at least most humans, these hypothetical entities could be explained by this manipulation. In many cases it is important for the predator, that the prey does not know who is lurking on the perimeter, or at least not perceived to be a threat, to keep doing what he does without being disturbed. An example of this manipulation is imagined by Elis Cephas. These intelligences, he suggests, may even use plants to coerce the human being. Spirits are inorganic intelligences, which might include what we call the souls of the dead. Being inorganic or dead have no physical access to sensitive matter. This is an area in which I am not 100% sure, because apparently inorganic spirits can live in organic matter, in the same way that the elemental beings or fairies, it is said, can live in the rocks and other plants. It may be that these spirits seek specifically to experience human existence, and human beings incarnated make it a form ingested entheogens to achieve this. Whatever the case, appear to want not only congress but entry into and through our consciousness, which achieve not only by accessing our neurons, while being kidnapped by psychoactive chemicals, but the entire network, to which these neurons are linked. One of the most detailed descriptions of these alleged entities that feed on humans is developed by Carlos Castaneda, initially cryptically, under the name of the inorganic beings, and then, in the active side of infinity, more explicitly with the name the predator and flying, which came from the depths of the cosmos to govern our lives. Some believe that Castaneda's books are fiction, and which often uses metaphors when many people take it literally. Either way is a reference on this topic. Castaneda puts into the mouth of Don Juan Matus, they are the ones who set up our hopes and expectations and dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed and cowardice. It is the predators who make us complacent, self-centered routine. Predators give us their mind, which becomes our mind. This last sentence has echoes of Gnostic philosophy, where the inorganic beings, or flying predators, are called archons, planetary lords, which according to Christian texts as the Nag Hammadi, are a kind of simulated reality tricksters who create duplicate man who falls deceptively like a fish takes the bait a hook. In the Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, Philip K. Dick gives voice to an archon interplanetary infiltrates the individual and collective mind of humanity. What I mean is that I will become all people on the planet. I'll be all settlers, while arrive and start living here. Shall guide your civilization. Its will be their civilization. On several occasions, we do not know if metaphorically, Gurdjieff said that human beings were food of the moon, perhaps in a resonance with the Gnostic system, in which the rulers are seen as planetary bodies, usually 7 to 7 planets. French researcher Jacques Vallée, similarly, says in his libro Messengers of Deception that aliens or cyborgs come from local planetary system, that UFO is spiritual control system, which acts as a process conditioning, and that these alleged entities rather than use machines ships would be altering our perception, or playing with the laws of physics that we know. This apparent manipulation we would object, forging a belief system likely to stay as cannon fodder, perhaps could explain the role organized religion has had on the man hysteria. Thinkers such as Marx and Nietzsche warned that religion functioned as a physiological manipulation operation designed to strip the man of his personal power, inducing a state of stupor and submission. Despite this removal of individual strength generating a worship of entities and mechanisms that promoted the expulsions. Even, for a long time, in many cultures, animals were sacrificed and humans to satisfy the hunger of these higher entities. But these entities exist predatory, is not it just what they should be, to think of them as gods? And so we were no surprises us in the Humanero and March Ramos without resistance to the slaughter. In the Bible on several occasions referred to divinity parent or child as the shepherd, and the human being as the sheep or cattle. The Greek gods also get the epithet, in the Homeric epics, the shepherds of men. The pastor can develop some affection for his sheep, but in the end it always does manipulate his cattle for food. This is the essence of a shepherd and one flock. Now if any of these entities, beyond that looks scary at first and second, and most important, represent an insurmountable obstacle to evolutionary continuity of man and the freedom of the individual, this is by no means something to be taken the wrong way. Somehow, in the divine mystery of the universe, that which is above us, angel or vampire, is what propels us, tugging us up, motivates us to overcome the current stage of victims of predatory reality. Castaneda explains in the words of Don Juan, the flyers are an essential part of the universe, and should be taken as what they really are: awesome, monstrous. They are the means by which the universe tests us. The teacher Gurdjieff makes the speech, the possibilities exist and evolve in some individuals can develop. The forces opposed to the evolution of human masses are also opposed to the development of each man. Touch each chase squirrels. In some ways, if any, these entities are like the guardians of the castle or paradise, both the sword of the archangel and the promise of the serpent. Like that annoying usher, that prevents the entrance to the law god to the transpersonalization of Kafka in the trial, are terrible, merciless, unfathomable, but also essential, if we want to access that higher reality, a mystery, that calls us from the depths of our spirit, which dissolves the universe and all of existence. They are there, at the end of the level, and define if we get game over and start on the wheel of life, or reach the thalamus of the princess, the dowry of Gaia Sophia.